What is this vintage solid wooden turn tool with a handle and wedge-type end? I found it in a thrift store with no markings on it, and approximately 5 inches long. It looks like a printing wedge used to keep plates in place, but I'm not sure. I tried Google search to no avail. Any idea what it is for? It's a 19th century sailmaker's seam rubber. These objects were used by sailmakers to produce sharp folds in canvas sails prior to sewing and to smooth stitching. The rubber is tactile with a ball that sits in the palm to push the wedge-shaped end over a seam. What is this star-shaped glass thing that magnifies under the glass? About 5 to 5.5 inches across, and appears to have had some decorative paint that has worn off in the points of the star. I got it at an estate sale with a crafty project in mind. I am curious if it had a specific purpose at one point. Any ideas? It's a Victorian goofus glass morning star. People used to place a photo of their departed loved one under the center glass dome during the mourning period. Each point has a forget-me-not flower engraved in it. And posing with dead people for a memorial photo was fairly common practice then. What are these concrete structures beside the runway of the Vietnam airport? They are 3 walls connected to each other at a right angle. They look like an enclosure, but the 4th wall is missing. There are more than a dozen of these structures, and they are located along the runway of Tan Son Nhat International Airport in Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam. Any ideas? They are called revetments. These walls are as much about protecting neighboring aircraft as it is to protect the aircraft within the revetment. If a combat aircraft loaded with fuel and munitions were to ignite by accident, then a chain reaction might lead to the destruction of its neighbors. These 12 aircraft revetments were built by the US in Tan Son Nhat Airport for use during the Vietnam War, 1955 to the fall of Saigon on the 30th of April, 1975. It measures 20 meters long, 10 meters wide, and 3 meters high. What is this old heavy wooden plank with a metal contraption and spring that looks like a rat trap? I just found it in a back storage room with a bunch of old audio gear and lots of tiny nails throughout the whole thing. It's approximately 11 inches long by 5 inches wide and quite dense at 3 pounds. No writing or marking of any kind, and looks like it's missing a piece or element, but not sure. Any ideas? It's the volume pedal for a 1950s to 60s Hammond organ. It's an electric organ invented by Lawrence Hammond and first manufactured in 1935. The organ was originally marketed by the Hammond Organ Company to churches as a lower-cost alternative to the wind-driven pipe organ, or instead of a piano. In the 1970s, the Hammond Organ Company abandoned tone wheels and switched to integrated circuits. These organs were less popular, and the company went out of business in 1985. What is this large heavy cast iron circular tube located in Midwest City's backyard? Approximately 3 feet in diameter, 10 inches thick tubing, and weighs about 200 pounds. It appears to be cast iron from weight and feel, and obvious casting marks on the outside and inside edges, and all tubing is interconnected on the interior. I found it in the backyard of an inner-city Minneapolis, and no history. It was here when the house was purchased. Any ideas are appreciated. That is the heat exchanger from an old coal-fired furnace. I'm not sure of the year, but they are popular in the 40s. It circulates flue gas to the center dome, then to the front part of the donut, around the sides to the back, past a manual balancing damper at the flue connection, and then up the chimney. This stove is not likely to be efficient by today's standards, because it is not equipped with a secondary burn chamber. What is this heavy metal chain-like object about a foot long? We found this hanging in an old shed behind our 1920s house. The rings are about 4 inches in diameter. The thing weighs a few pounds and appears to be old and rusted. It's been bugging me to find out what it is. Any ideas? It's a planter drag chain from the early 20th century. These chains are for a drag-type implement pulled through the field by a tractor or horse. They pull fine soil particles over the seed trench and level the soil. They offer low-cost insurance that your seed trench is sealed tight. What is this thing I found in a Lisbon flea market? Two identical hemispheres joined by a comfortable-to-hold handle across the middle. It's heavy and very durable, made of metal and worn from use. It has Lisbon written on it in Portuguese and has a recessed hole through the center of each hemisphere. We hypothesized the previous presence of ball bearings in the recessed circular grooves, but couldn't see super obvious evidence of wear consistent with the same. And I tried Google image reverse search and only got assorted car parts. Can anyone help identify this? It's the cast iron burner part for an old camping stove, like this from a 1930s Coleman camp stove. It was an economy model that sold for $4.45 when it was introduced in 1936. What is this 30-pound, 3-foot by 1-foot glass panel thought to be from World War I or II? It appears to be a double-panel glass window pane. It is not a mirror, the edge is metallic, and the glass panels are very thick, maybe half an inch or so each. The elderly woman who owns it tells me that it originally had just bullet holes in it, but that her daughter dropped it at some point years ago, and it shattered further. I consider the owner to be an unreliable source though. Well, because she's in her 80s and gets confused sometimes. There are definitely areas that resemble bullet strikes, but they don't penetrate deeply at all. The clear panel seems so thick and armored that I seriously doubt it would shatter like that if dropped. Besides, there are no dents in the metal frame anywhere. Any idea what this thing is? It's a windscreen from a F4 Phantom. It entered service with the Navy in 1961, before it was adopted by the United States Marine Corps and the United States Air Force, and by the mid-1960s, it had become a major part of their air arms. Phantom production ran from 1958 to 1981, with a total of 5,195 aircraft built, making it the most produced American supersonic military aircraft in history. Here is an interior view of the Phantom cockpit. The center windscreen looks like it has the same orange gasket as in your photo. What is this thing I purchased at an auction with other rolling pins? Approximately 22 inches long, with painted wooden handles, the center is metal, and it spins. I'm guessing a rolling pin, but for what? It certainly wouldn't make food flat and isn't sharp enough for the detailed pastries one sees. Any ideas? Please let us know down in the comments. Thanks for watching. Let's make life fun.